Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. I want to invite you into a moment of quiet reflection tonight. Picture this, you're sitting alone, scrolling through old photos or hearing a song you both loved, and somewhere deep inside you feel it. A pull, a twinge, a question you can't quite shake. You've moved on, or at least you think you have, but her energy lingers. Or maybe, just maybe, it's not your energy that's lingering. It's hers. Have you ever felt that subtle tension when you cross paths with her? When her gaze lingers half a second too long, when her laugh seems a bit louder when you're near, when she asks innocent questions that feel not so innocent. These are not obvious confessions of love, no grand declarations, but there's something there, beneath the surface, waiting unresolved. And here's what most men miss. Women often don't reveal their lingering attachment through words. They express it in fragments, in micro gestures, in the stories they tell themselves. And sometimes in the stories they still tell about you. In today's conversation, I want to take you gently but deeply into this terrain. If you've ever wondered whether she's truly moved on or whether her heart is still entangled with yours, stay with me. What I'll share is not just a checklist, it's a lens, a way of seeing the human heart, so let's step into this space together. Slowly, intimately, carefully. I'm so glad you're here, because what we're about to explore is subtle. It's about the undercurrent, the invisible signs that reveal when someone isn't quite finished with you, when she's not over you, even if every outward sign seems to suggest otherwise. You see, breakups today are rarely clean. We live in an age where endings are blurred by texts, stories, memories that resurface in a late night scroll, and that quiet curiosity that lingers in both minds long after the relationship ends. Sometimes she'll say she's moved on proudly, even defiantly, but if you look closely, if you listen carefully, there are signals that betray her heart's unfinished business. And if you're a man who's ever found yourself wondering, is she really done with me, or is she still entangled in ways even she can't admit to herself, then this conversation is for you. Let's step into that first sign, the way she holds your attention captive, even when she's pretending she's looking elsewhere. If you find her watching your stories within minutes of posting, if her name appears consistently at the top of your viewers list, that's not just digital coincidence. It's modern proximity. Watching your digital life unfold is her way of staying close enough to you while preserving a sense of emotional distance. This is where the illusion begins. She might not text you anymore, she might not call, but her quiet presence in your online world is a subtle but profound sign. She hasn't fully let go. And it's not just about viewing your content, it's about how she interacts with it. Maybe she's liking things she never used to pay attention to, that gym photo you casually uploaded, that picture of you laughing with friends, that project you shared that has nothing to do with her world but suddenly seems to warrant her applause. You might wonder, why does she care now? The truth is, attention becomes a stand-in for intimacy. Her likes, her views, her little digital taps are modern breadcrumbs, fragments of connection left behind because she isn't ready for that connection to truly die. But let's take this beyond the digital. Have you noticed how she seems to weave you into her conversations with mutual friends? When you meet a friend and they casually mention that she brought you up innocently, lightly, oh, she was asking how you've been. This is another subtle sign. Even when she's supposedly moved on, she can't help but keep tabs on your world through shared channels. This isn't always intentional manipulation. Often it's unconscious. It's a way for her to maintain her place in your story without the vulnerability of re-entering it directly. And here's the paradox. Sometimes the more she insists she's over you, the more she speaks about you to others. That casual reference she drops when she's laughing with friends, oh, well, you know what he was like, or even a little playful jab at you in a conversation, these are not simply remarks. They are openings. They suggest you are still on her mind, still taking up real estate in her emotional landscape. Pay attention to those references because they're telling. A woman who has truly closed that chapter no longer needs to narrate you into her present. Then there's that almost imperceptible change in her demeanor when you meet in person. She may smile just a little too brightly, laugh a little too easily, or become unusually shy or self-conscious around you. And here's where you must remember, the body rarely lies. Even if her words declare freedom, her eyes may linger longer than they should. Her posture may open toward you as if drawn magnetically. Her tone may soften without her realizing it. Her entire nervous system can betray the truth she might not yet want to face, that her emotional tie to you remains unfinished. It can also appear in the reverse. She might act distant, cold, aloof. But there's a distinction. True indifference is flat. It has no charge, no emotional residue. But if she's going out of her way to avoid you, to ignore you conspicuously, or if her indifference feels exaggerated, if there's heat behind it, that's not detachment. That's performance. Sometimes the most passionate signs that she's not over you come disguised as disdain or disinterest, but they're actually evidence of her internal struggle. Her emotions remain engaged, and the effort it takes her to suppress or deny them speaks volumes. And perhaps one of the most intimate signs of all is when she finds ways to help you indirectly. Maybe she recommends you for something, or reaches out to let a friend know about a job opportunity for you, or checks in about a health issue you once shared. These are not random acts of kindness. They're small extensions of care that allow her to remain relevant in your life without needing to admit her deeper feelings outright. As we continue to explore this delicate terrain, I want you to hold a certain mindset. This is not about judging her or reading her every gesture as a declaration of love. No, this is about seeing clearly, about understanding that sometimes what appears resolved is still quietly alive beneath the surface. When you pay attention to these subtleties, her digital footprints, the way she threads your name into conversations, the nervous shifts in her body language, the exaggerated distance, unexpected moments of care, you begin to see that letting go is not a clean break for many women. It's often a slow unwinding, a process filled with contradictions. And remember this, you don't have to act on every sign you notice. Awareness itself is powerful. To recognize these signs is not an invitation to rush back in, but an opportunity to understand where she, and perhaps even where you still stand emotionally. It gives you the clarity to move forward wisely, not reactively. So as you think about those moments when you've caught her watching from afar, or speaking about you to friends, or offering gestures of care, I want you to ask yourself gently, is this woman truly finished with this connection, or is she still, in her own way, holding on? And as you sit with that question, is she truly finished, or is she still holding on in her quiet way? I want to guide you into an even deeper layer of this dance. Because sometimes the signs that she's not over you don't appear in what she does directly to you, but in how she shows up in her own life when you're no longer supposed to be watching. Have you noticed that she suddenly starts posting photos where she looks unusually radiant, carefully curated moments, laughing a little too perfectly, captured in places you used to visit together, or with people who resemble your world? There's an entire performance here, and this is important. These aren't just lifestyle updates. They are sometimes unconsciously designed to be seen by you. This is what I call indirect communication. She might not text you, but her Instagram feed becomes a stage where she plays out the version of her life she most wants you to see often, the version where she's thriving, independent, glowing. But this performance can itself be a sign she's not over you, because when we are truly free from someone, we don't curate our lives for their gaze anymore. We live simply, organically, and without thought of the other's eyes. This phenomenon is common in modern breakups. Social media becomes a proxy battlefield where unfinished emotions play out quietly but visibly. And here's where you must practice emotional discernment. When a woman is truly detached, her life moves in its own rhythm, unconcerned with who's watching. But when she's still entangled, she becomes hyper, aware of what image reaches you. The timing of her posts, the places she chooses to be seen, the friends she suddenly becomes closer to, especially if they're connected to your circle, all reveal an orientation toward you, even in absence. Then there's the paradox of avoidance and proximity. Have you ever felt like she's avoiding you in person, but constantly finding ways to stay near you emotionally? Perhaps she stops visiting the cafe where you used to go together, but now you learn she's asking friends about your new routines. She may have unfollowed you on social media, but remains closely connected to mutual friends who feed her updates about you. This kind of proximity with distance is a classic sign of emotional ambivalence. It's not that she's indifferent, it's that proximity still matters to her, but she's struggling with how to manage the vulnerability of that closeness. And sometimes you'll see it in moments that seem trivial but carry emotional weight. For example, maybe you share a song on your story, a song that was yours. And suddenly she responds, even if she hasn't reached out in months. Or you mention something that only the two of you understood, and she reacts playfully or curiously, as if she just couldn't resist stepping back into that private emotional space you once shared. Here's the truth: when women are truly done, they don't respond to these small invitations. They don't orbit around your life through these little openings. But when a woman is still emotionally connected, she'll find these subtle entry points, these familiar cues impossible to ignore. The emotional history you share becomes a magnetic field she still feels pulled toward. You might even notice her mirroring your changes. If you've started a new hobby or lifestyle, and suddenly you see her adopting similar patterns, maybe she's joined a gym after seeing you get back into shape, or she's exploring places you recently talked about visiting. This synchronicity can be more than coincidence. It can be a subconscious way of staying aligned with your evolution, remaining connected to your journey, even from a distance. There's another profound sign that often goes overlooked: emotional ambivalence in how she talks about the breakup itself. If she has conversations with mutual friends where she swings between criticism and nostalgia, "He was never right for me" in one breath, followed by "but we did have some good times" in the next, this emotional contradiction is not a sign of resolution. It's a sign that she's still processing, still turning the relationship over in her mind, trying to rewrite the narrative in a way that helps her manage her feelings. This is where the unfinished business of love often resides: in the ambivalence, in the back and forth, in the inability to land on a story that feels settled and final. Because when someone has truly moved on, the emotional intensity fades. They speak less, not more. The stories they tell about you become sparse or neutral. There's no longer a charge, no longer a thread pulling them back toward the past. So as you reflect on all these subtle cues, the carefully curated social media presence, the performance of freedom, the proximity through friends, the mirroring of your evolution, the ambivalent narratives, I want you to notice something deeper. The common denominator is that she remains emotionally engaged. She's still measuring herself against you, still orienting parts of her life toward your gaze, still finding ways to enter into your orbit without walking back into your arms. It's a delicate dance of distance and desire, of moving away and leaning back in, because letting go is not a linear process. And for many women, especially in a modern context where so many threads of connection remain through technology, letting go can feel like pulling apart an invisible web that still binds her to you. At this point, I want you to pause and ask yourself, why does this matter? Why should you care whether she's truly over you or not? And the answer is simple but profound. Because clarity gives you power. When you understand that her actions are not random, that they reflect emotional currents still running between you, you reclaim your emotional agency. You stop interpreting mixed signals as meaningless noise and instead recognize them for what they are, evidence of her own unresolved feelings. But awareness alone is not an invitation to act. In fact, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to observe without needing to respond. To hold the knowledge of her emotional engagement without rushing to re-engage yourself, because your path forward must be chosen from a place of clarity and strength, not reaction. And as we continue this conversation, we're going to step even deeper into how this subtle dance of connection reveals itself, and how you can stay grounded, wise, and self-possessed even as these signs swirl around you. And as you hold this awareness, that clarity itself is power, I want to invite you deeper into this question of presence. Because presence is not just about physical nearness. It's about where someone allows their emotional energy to land, about where their mind lingers, about where they continue to place their attention even when they tell themselves they have let go. And so often, when a woman says she's over you, yet her behavior reveals otherwise, this dissonance becomes her internal conflict and yours to observe. Have you ever noticed that she seems to echo your moods even from afar? When you're doing well and feeling strong, she seems to show up brighter and lighter, and when you retreat or withdraw emotionally, her own mood seems to darken or her distance seems greater. This emotional attunement is a subtle yet powerful sign she's still tuned into your frequency, still synchronizing with your emotional weather. It can feel eerie at times, almost as if she can sense your shifts without needing to hear from you directly. And that's because, in truth, even when the relationship is formally over, emotional ties often continue to stretch between two people until they are consciously severed. Sometimes this attunement shows up as unexpected support when you are struggling. Maybe you haven't shared much publicly, but you've been quietly going through a hard time. And then, out of nowhere, she reaches out, not directly perhaps, but indirectly, maybe through a friend or an innocuous comment on something you shared. It might seem casual on the surface, but underneath, it reflects a deep sensitivity to your emotional state, even at a distance. Or perhaps you've seen this. She begins revisiting places that hold significance for both of you, the restaurant where you first met, the neighborhood you used to walk together. And somehow you hear about it or see it on social media. These aren't simply new choices. These are echoes of the past, places that carry emotional residue, spaces that still hold the imprint of your connection. Her return to them is her return to the memory of you. Sometimes people revisit these places not because they want to reignite something explicitly, but because they feel comforted by proximity to old emotional anchors. Another subtle sign is when she begins to communicate through silence. Yes, through silence. This one is especially nuanced, but so very human. If you notice that she withdraws or suddenly disappears from interactions you might expect her to participate in, or if her absence becomes conspicuous at events where you're present, this too can reflect a form of emotional engagement it takes energy to avoid. Indifference has no effort, absence with intention does. When a woman is still entangled, her absence often carries the emotional charge of presence. You feel her not being there because she is still orienting her actions around you, even if only to avoid you. And what about when she reaches out indirectly, masked as politeness or practicality? For example, maybe she sends a message about something you left behind long ago, a book, a sweater, some object you had forgotten. Or she asks a question that seems logistical, but somehow unnecessary. These overtures are rarely about the item itself. They're about creating a reason to connect that feels safe and non-committal. A doorway left ajar, not wide open, but open nonetheless. You may also observe that her narratives about herself begin to shift in a way that still includes you, even subtly. She might reference your shared memories when speaking with mutual friends, or post a quote that reflects something you once said to her. These references aren't accidental. They emerge from a place where you still occupy a corner of her psyche, where your voice still echoes faintly in her inner world. Sometimes this emotional entanglement takes an even more intimate turn. You hear that she compares new people in her life to you. Perhaps a friend lets slip, "She said this guy reminds her of you." Or you notice that she's drawn to people who share some of your qualities. This isn't coincidence, it's a reflection of unresolved attachment. When we haven't fully detached from someone, we often seek their qualities in others, consciously or unconsciously. The search for resemblance is a clue that the emotional chapter is not yet closed. But here's where I want to invite a deeper reflection, because all these signs, these echoes, these moments that suggest she's not over you, they're not just about her. They're also mirrors for you. They reflect the residue of your bond. They reveal how connections continue to live in the in-between spaces, between curiosity and closure, between longing and distance, between care and detachment. So as you observe these signs, don't rush to act. Instead, turn inward, ask yourself, what do these signals stir in me? Do I still feel a pull toward this connection, or am I merely responding to the validation that she still notices me? Am I seeking her presence as reassurance of my worth, or is there genuine unfinished business in my own heart? Because understanding whether she's over you is only part of the picture. The deeper work is understanding what it means to you that she might not be. And this is where emotional maturity lies, in holding the knowledge without needing to react, in being able to witness someone's unfinished attachment without being pulled back into dynamics that may not serve you anymore. When a man can hold this space with grace, when he can recognize the signs that she's still emotionally entangled while staying grounded in his own clarity, he steps into emotional sovereignty. He becomes not just reactive, but intentional, not just aware, but wise. And that is where I want us to stay for a moment, in this place of wisdom. The recognition that relationships rarely end neatly, that emotions often stretch across the boundaries we try to set, that a woman's lingering attachment can manifest in myriad subtle ways, from her gaze on your social media to her stories told in your absence, from her silences to her careful appearances, from her indirect overtures to her emotional attunement. When you see these signs clearly, you can make decisions rooted in self-respect and awareness. Not because you need to fix her emotions, not because you are obligated to respond, but because clarity itself is a gift to you and to her. And as you sit with this awareness, this recognition of how her subtle signs might reflect not only her unfinished business, but also your own emotional terrain, let's stay here a little longer. Because this conversation isn't simply about decoding her behavior, it's about understanding the relational dance that persists between two people who have shared intimacy. When we've loved deeply, that connection rarely ends cleanly. The human heart doesn't close doors neatly. It leaves them ajar, sometimes wide open, sometimes just slightly cracked, and often in ways that neither person fully acknowledges out loud. There's something delicate about the way she might still include you in her inner world, even when she outwardly insists she's moved on. Have you ever caught a glimpse of this through her vulnerability? Maybe she sends a message late at night, a simple question or an unexpected comment, and then quickly withdraws, almost embarrassed that she reached out at all. Those moments can feel fleeting, but they are revealing. They suggest that in moments of loneliness, confusion, or nostalgia, her heart still turns in your direction before she catches herself. It's in these quiet, impulsive moments that her unresolved feelings most clearly surface, Perhaps she sends you a song you once loved together or comments on an old inside joke. And maybe she quickly follows that with a disclaimer, just thought this was funny, or don't read into this. But the truth is that she herself is reading into it even as she downplays it. This is her way of testing the waters without admitting that she's still wading in them. You might also notice a kind of ambivalence in how she responds to the idea of you moving on. Maybe she says she wishes you well, even encourages you to date again, but there's a subtle hesitation in her tone, a softness in her eyes when she says it. Sometimes she might even joke about your future partners, or playfully suggest she'll approve of them, but beneath the humor is an emotional edge. If she seems overly interested in your love life, or makes sarcastic or teasing remarks about your dating choices, this too can be a subtle sign she's not fully at peace with your absence in her emotional landscape. And let's not forget the role of nostalgia, that tricky, tender emotion that often reveals itself when she reminisces about the past with unusual vividness. If she recounts shared memories in detail, mentioning the way you used to laugh, the meals you cooked together, the trips you took, this is more than storytelling. It's her way of keeping those moments alive, of anchoring herself to a time when the two of you were emotionally intertwined. These stories often come up unexpectedly, in casual conversations or in moments when she feels safe enough to let her guard down. But there's another layer here, her patterns of self-improvement. Have you noticed that she's suddenly investing more energy into her growth, her appearance, her hobbies, particularly in ways that she knows would matter to you or catch your attention? This isn't simply about moving on or becoming her best self. Sometimes this accelerated self-development is motivated by the desire to be seen again, to re-enter your gaze in a way that evokes admiration, curiosity, or even longing. This can take many forms. Perhaps she's sharing more about her achievements publicly, pursuing passions she knows you valued, or embodying qualities she sensed you wanted more of when you were together. On the surface, it may appear that she's flourishing, but beneath that growth there may still be an unconscious hope that you're noticing, that her evolution will awaken something in you. This is not to diminish her accomplishments, but to recognize that the emotional undercurrent still runs between you, shaping choices that seem independent but remain quietly oriented toward you. And this leads us into a deeper paradox, because while these signs suggest she hasn't fully let go, they also reflect her attempt to process her attachment in her own way. People often try to heal through performance, by being seen, by being impressive, by appearing independent. And in many ways, this is understandable. It's part of the human condition. We heal through connection, through self-expression, through rewriting our stories in ways that help us feel powerful again. Yet it's also why some women, even as they declare their independence, will continue to orbit around you emotionally, because they are still healing the rupture, still writing a version of story where they emerge not as hurt or abandoned, but as whole, desirable, thriving. You may also feel this tension when mutual friends begin to reflect her thoughts back to you. Perhaps they mention that she's brought you up recently, not just casually but with emotional intensity. Maybe she confesses to a friend that she wonders if she made the right decision, or she asks them about your life in ways that seem unusually invested for someone who claims to have moved on. These indirect inquiries suggest she's still emotionally tethered, still needing to know how you're doing, where you're headed, who you've become since her absence. All of these signs, her late-night messages, her playful yet emotionally charged remarks about your love life, her nostalgic storytelling, her accelerated self-development, her subtle inquiry through friends are invitations for you to see clearly, not necessarily to act, but to understand. And here's the crucial part. Clarity doesn't always mean closure. Sometimes it simply means seeing the complexity of human attachment for what it is: messy, contradictory, layered. Just because she's not fully over you doesn't mean she wants to return. And just because she exhibits these signs doesn't mean you should respond in kind. What matters is that you become the one who can hold all of this complexity without losing your center, without being pulled into dynamics that no longer serve your growth. It's easy to get caught in these signs and interpret them as an invitation back into romance. But what I want you to remember is that noticing these signs is less about rekindling and more about understanding. Understanding the human heart, understanding the lingering attachments that can't persist even after relationships end, and understanding your own capacity to observe these things with wisdom, grace, and dignity. When a man can do that, when he can recognize the subtle signs, she's not over him while staying grounded in his own truth, he becomes free. Not because he's cold or indifferent, but because he's compassionate without being entangled, aware without being reactive. So stay in this space of quiet observation for a while. Feel into the signs, not to confirm your ego or chase validation, but to understand the emotional landscape you share, or once shared with her. This is the work of emotional maturity, being able to see clearly without rushing to fix, to rescue, or to relive the past. So as you remain here, quietly observing her signs, holding them in the palm of your awareness without clinging to them or letting them dictate your next move, I want to invite you to notice something even more subtle, the ways she tests the edges of your attention. Sometimes her behavior might shift between closeness and withdrawal, leaving you wondering, what is she trying to communicate? Perhaps she's suddenly warm and engaging, only to grow distant again days later. This inconsistency is not random, it is often a reflection of her inner ambivalence. She may be drawn to the comfort of your familiarity, while simultaneously fearing the vulnerability of reconnecting. In this way, her mixed signals aren't about manipulation, they are about hesitation, about uncertainty, about the human struggle to let go of something that once felt safe while trying to convince oneself that it no longer matters. Have you felt that? A sudden message after weeks of silence, hey? I just thought of you when I saw this, followed by days of quiet. Or maybe she accidentally likes an old photo of yours at 3 a.m, only to pretend it never happened. These moments may seem insignificant in isolation, but when viewed together, they sketch a portrait of emotional unfinishedness. A woman who is over you doesn't engage in such half-steps. Her absence would feel clean, her disengagement consistent. But when she's still wrestling with feelings, this pattern of dipping in and out becomes a way of managing her own uncertainty while checking to see whether you are still, in some way, accessible to her. And then there's the way she reacts to your boundaries. If you begin to withdraw emotionally, not in anger or bitterness, but from a place of self-respect, her reaction can be telling. Does she notice immediately? Does she make an effort to re-establish contact or express curiosity about why you've grown distant? Her response to your distance is one of the clearest signs of her emotional investment. Sometimes when a man quietly begins to step into his own space, reclaiming his emotional autonomy, it unsettles a woman who is not yet finished emotionally. She may find subtle ways to pull you back into conversation, through humor, nostalgia, or shared concerns, because your attention still holds value for her. But here's something else that's important, the way she engages with your emotional expressions. If you show indifference, she may push harder. If you respond with warmth, she may retreat again. This push-pull dynamic is a sign of her ambivalence, a sign that she has not fully resolved how she feels about you. And while it may look confusing from the outside, internally it reflects a profound emotional struggle, the conflict between wanting to be free of the attachment and still being drawn toward it. And that's where the challenge lies for you. Because it's easy to get caught in this pattern, to be pulled back and forth by her ambivalence, to mistake her moments of warmth for commitment and her distance for rejection. But when you step back and look at the pattern as a whole, what you see is not clarity but ambivalence. And ambivalence is not a foundation on which you can build a healthy connection. Even the way she shows up at key moments in your life can reveal her emotional entanglement. Does she suddenly become visible during milestones, birthdays, promotions, or moments of vulnerability? Does she send you a congratulatory message just when you're feeling strong, or offer comfort just when you're struggling? This timing is rarely coincidental. It suggests that she is still attuned to your rhythms, still emotionally invested in your journey even from a distance. But the paradox here is subtle. Her engagement may not be conscious. She may genuinely believe she's moved on, while her actions betray a deeper truth she isn't fully ready to face herself. Sometimes the signs that she's not over you reveal more about her own internal state than about any desire to rekindle the relationship. Her unfinished feelings don't necessarily mean she wants to return. They mean she's still navigating her own closure. This is why discernment is so vital. Your ability to see these signs clearly, to observe her behavior without rushing to interpret it as an invitation or a rejection, is what protects your emotional well-being. It allows you to maintain your center while recognizing that her journey is hers to complete. And in this space of discernment, something beautiful begins to emerge, your own emotional sovereignty. The freedom to see her lingering attention as a reflection of her process, not as a verdict on your worth or a cue for your next move. The ability to honor the history you shared without being defined by it. The capacity to stand in your own clarity while respecting her struggle with hers. So let's stay here for a moment, in this delicate space between observation and action, between awareness and choice. Ask yourself gently, what do I truly want? Do I wish to respond to her signs, or am I content to let her journey unfold without needing to intervene? Am I seeking validation from her lingering attention, or am I ready to honor my own healing and forward movement? Because here's the truth, it's natural to want to matter to someone who once mattered to you. It's human to feel a pull toward signs that you are still remembered, still valued, still occupying a place in her heart. But there's a profound difference between appreciating those signs and being governed by them. When you can witness her unfinished emotions without being tethered to them, you step into emotional freedom. And freedom, in this sense, is not cold detachment. It's compassionate presence. It's the ability to see her clearly, her hesitations, her contradictions, her subtle invitations, without needing to rescue her or rescue yourself from the ambiguity. Freedom is knowing that your self-worth doesn't hinge on her attention, that your path forward is defined not by her signals, but by your own clarity and self-respect. So stay grounded here. Observe with warmth, but also with wisdom. Recognize the signs, but don't be seduced by them. Hold space for the complexity of human emotion, but don't get lost in it. And as we continue this conversation, you'll find that this discernment, this ability to stand firmly in yourself while acknowledging the emotional residue that still lingers between you, is very key to reclaiming your power, your peace, and your path. And as we arrive here, toward the end of this conversation, I want you to pause with me, to breathe for a moment and notice how it feels to simply hold everything we've explored: her signals, her silence, her hesitations, her emotional ambivalence, without rushing to assign meaning, without rushing to fix or decide. Because there's one more layer to all of this that we must talk about. When a woman isn't fully over you, it doesn't only show up in what she does around you. It often shows up in what she struggles to do without you. And that can be invisible unless you're looking closely. It shows up when she tries to recreate something that was unique to your relationship. Maybe she seeks comfort in a dynamic that feels familiar, but somehow never quite fits. Or maybe she tries to redefine herself in ways that echo who she was with you, testing whether the new chapter can feel as rich, as intimate, as alive. Sometimes she may even jump quickly into a new relationship, proclaiming her independence, but beneath that proclamation is a deeper question she may not dare voice. Can I really move on, or am I trying to outrun this lingering tie? This, too, is a sign, not one she broadcasts openly, but one that lives quietly in the way she approaches her future. The velocity with which she seeks distraction can speak volumes. The very speed at which she fills the empty spaces can reveal how much she is still trying to escape the gravity of what you once shared. And then, in moments when she lets herself be honest, maybe only with herself late at night, or perhaps in fleeting remarks to a friend, she may admit that parts of her are still tangled up in questions about you. Did she make the right choice? Could things have been different? Is there still a thread between you that feels uncut? It's in these private moments that the truth often lives. You might never hear these admissions directly. She may never allow herself to say them aloud to you, but her behavior will continue to tell the story, the way she reappears at the edges of your life just when you least expect it, the way her curiosity about you doesn't fade fully, the way her silence isn't absence but avoidance, filled with energy rather than emptiness. This is what makes closure so difficult in modern relationships. The connection doesn't always end at goodbye. It lingers in spaces we don't always name: mutual friends, social media, shared memories, places we both called ours. And sometimes the very tools we use to maintain distance, technology, polite detachment, casual encounters, keep that connection alive in small, persistent ways. But here's where I want to guide you gently toward the deepest truth. All of this is normal. It's human. It's not a sign of failure, hers or yours. It's simply a reflection of how attachment works, how intimacy leaves traces, how relationships end in chapters long before they end in our minds and bodies. And yet, while it is human for her to hold on in subtle ways, it is also your responsibility to know where you stand, to not be swept away by the waves of her unfinished process, to not confuse her signs of lingering attachment with a readiness for something new or different. She may still think about you, she may still care in her own way, but that doesn't mean she is prepared to meet you now as a partner capable of building something healthier or wiser than what existed before. So the real question is this: what do you want this awareness to mean for you? Because noticing that she's not over you is only part of the work. The deeper work is about reclaiming your own emotional agency, the power to choose how you respond, or whether you respond at all. You could interpret her lingering attention as a green light to re-enter the relationship, or you could simply recognize it as a beautiful but incomplete process, her journey, not your obligation. The art here is in discernment, in understanding that her unfinished feelings are real but not necessarily a call for reconciliation. You can honor that she once cared for you deeply, that her heart may still carry echoes of that care, while also honoring the distance you've chosen or need to choose now. You can witness her attempts to remain visible in your life without needing to pull her closer or push her away dramatically. Because in this emotional landscape, where signs, signals, silences, and small gestures all intertwine, your clarity is your compass. Your self-respect is your anchor. When you stand in that place, you're able to navigate even the most confusing emotional terrain with grace. And this is where your strength as a man lies, not in reacting impulsively to every sign she gives you, not in interpreting her attention as an invitation or her withdrawal as rejection, but in holding yourself steady in the knowledge of who you are, what you desire, and what you need in this moment of your life. So if you see her watching from afar, if you hear that she's still speaking about you, if she reaches out in half, measures that reveal ambivalence rather than clarity, remember that you can see it all, feel it all, and yet remain grounded. You don't have to match her ambivalence with your own. You can stay clear even when she is not. And this, my friend, is emotional sovereignty, the ability to stay rooted in your truth, to observe without absorbing, to care without collapsing back into old patterns, to recognize that you can love someone, even honor the love you once shared, and yet choose to move forward fully and freely. This is not about building walls around your heart. It's about building bridges to your future, bridges that allow you to carry the lessons of your past without dragging its unfinished threads behind you. It's about knowing that while her journey may still involve you in some quiet way, your journey is yours alone to chart. So as we close this conversation tonight, I want you to hold this final thought gently. The fact that she's not fully over you doesn't mean you are meant to return to her. It means she's still learning how to let go. And you get to choose how you honor that process with compassion, yes, but also with wisdom, with boundaries, and most importantly, with clarity about who you are becoming. This is where your power lies, in your ability to see clearly, feel deeply, and still choose the path that serves your growth. And if you found yourself resonating with these reflections today, I want you to know you're not alone. We all carry traces of unfinished attachments, just as others carry traces of us. The key is not to sever those traces harshly, but to honor them and then walk forward anyway. Thank you for spending this time with me in this conversation. If this spoke to you, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below, your stories, your reflections, your experiences. And if you feel moved, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Intimacy Lab for more conversations like this, conversations that honor the complexity of love, attachment, and what it means to heal. Here's to you, to your clarity, to your self-respect, to your freedom. May you walk forward gently, firmly, and with grace.